What's good, my people? Flash Speaks back for another video. See, right now I'm kind of relegated to this little corny intro music. Trying to figure out a way to get the type of stuff I really want on here. But YouTube, man, got so many restrictions. It's crazy. But anyway, man, we on to Philadelphia Eagles. Right now, the running theme, pretty much all over the place from haters and fans alike, is that the Philadelphia Eagles really are not that good a team. People are going based off the first 5 weeks, first 5 games, though the Eagles are 3-2. The only thing I can guess the reason for this is that people must have had expectations for the Eagles that were sky high. And when people have expectations, they expect those expectations to be met early. Week 1, people don't care, man, if it's week 1, week 2, week 3. They want to see 3-0, 4-0. And I get it in Eagle land, Eagle Nation. The last 2 seasons, the Philadelphia Eagles had the best records to start the year off. You know, last year we were the last team to actually lose a game. I believe we may have went 5-0 or 6-0, something like that. And then the year before, I think we went 8 or 9-0. So I think this is what the measuring stick is now for the Eagles, it seems to me. I myself had high expectations coming into the year, and my expectations are still high. However, along with the high expectations, I had with that the understanding that it could be a possibility that it's a build. You know, it's a build, that it could be something that starts off slow, that builds. Because what's most important is that you are playing your best football going into the playoffs. It's not about how well you're doing in the first 4 weeks necessarily. And then, you know, I had to factor in the fact that the Philadelphia Eagles were starting to implement a completely new offense and also a new defense, new players, all of these different types of things. This does not mean you can't go to the playoffs, and doesn't mean you can't go far. But what it does mean is those teams that have had the continuity in all these areas are at an advantage. Though it doesn't always matter, because you see what's happening with some teams, you know. Now, what I'll say is this, man. What I'm going to play is some national pundits' opinions about the Eagles right now, which seems to be the running theme. We're going to listen, and going to give our commentary.
Joyce Tunes Buick GMC has the vehicle you need at the price you want to pay.
Excuse me with that. Terrible, right?
Eagles visit the Giants on Sunday in Saquon Barkley's Super Bowl. Philly coming off a 20-16, somewhat uninspiring win over the Browns in a game that ended with something of a bizarre interaction between Nick Sirianni and the home fans. Again, Saquon hoping to do his thing. Sirianni, we better hope, doesn't do this thing. Here was Dan Orlovsky yesterday.
This is the least prepared football team in the NFL. The least prepared. They've had 5 opening drives this season. They got 22 yards. So you mean to tell me an offense that has Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith and Dallas Goedert, and one of the best offensive line in football, and Saquon Barkley, they got 22 yards? You guys know this, in my opinion at least. In the NFL, how you finish games is really about players. How you start games is really about coaching.
I thought that was a really interesting.
That was an interesting thing Dan Orlovsky said there. So he's putting it on the coaches, which I think most people agree. The coaches are the biggest question mark for the Philadelphia Eagles. And he mentions that in 5 games that the Philadelphia Eagles had 22 starts now, where I think he may have erred a little bit here, is you got Jalen Hurts, you got A.J. Brown, you got Devontae Smith, you got Saquon Barkley. Well, all of those guys were not available for each game. A.J. Brown, out of the 5 games the Eagles have played, has only participated in 2. He was hurt after week 1. bothered his hamstring. This caused him to miss weeks 2, weeks 3, and weeks 4. So he came back for weeks 5, and you saw the difference in the team with A.J. Brown there. Devontae Smith also missed a game. Really, you would say he missed a game and a half because he was hurt midway through the Saints game. So there is the injury thing there, the injury factor. However, what Dan said that they should have had more than 22 yards. That is kind of pretty crazy. Now, I'm thinking he must be talking about, is he talking about the opening drive? He can't be possibly talking about the first quarter. He's talking about the opening drive, I assume. And that is coaching. I do agree. Even last week, the Eagles start off with a 3-and-out, and there's 2 passes, 1 run. And there's a number of reasons for it, I'm sure. Part of it is philosophical, and the other part is just bad play calling.
And we got a lot of reactions to it here. We'll start with Teddy, because you sort of jumped on that. I don't want to go too big picture here, but generally, did you agree with what Dan said?
No, I don't. I mean, the coaches have big involvement in quarters 2, 3, and 4, in my opinion, also. And about players finishing games, it's also players starting games. The whole 4 quarters are the players. All right, you can call whatever you want, offensively, defensively, special teams. Players got to go out there and execute. This is what we're talking about here is a team that is 3-2. Okay, let's just put it that way, because I'm a bottom line type of guy, and we can talk about quarters and how they finish and the number of yards with yardage stats. I don't even want to get started with all of that stuff, but listen, bottom line, this is a 3-2 football team that possibly could be even better, that needs to get a little bit healthy. The head coach, yes. Does the head coach need to chill a little bit? Absolutely. I mean, a little bit of coaching on the field goal block team would help a little bit. If somebody's in the A-gap like Myles Garrett and they're about to jump, I mean, stop that person from jumping in the air. Simple things like that. I don't think it's a catastrophic problem in Philadelphia with the head coach or their preparation, because eventually with your preparation, you got to come back and win football games in quarters 2, 3, and 4.
What do you think, Mike?
Teddy Bruschi there. I love Teddy Bruschi, man. He was one of the mainstays towards the beginning of that Patriots run, because the Patriots really had 2 eras, which is so amazing for them, because I consider the era to be like 10 years. They won 3 Super Bowls in the 2000s, and then won 3 in the 2010s. Something that's never been done before, And he was one of those major guys there. He was either the middle linebacker or he might have been an outside linebacker. Teddy Bruschi, him and Mike Vrabel, and you can tell here he has an old school mentality, old school approach to it. He's not digging too deep into these crazy, analytics that like Dan likes to do and stuff like that. And he's not differentiating between whether or not you start off fast or you slow or this and that, and whether or not it's the coaches or the players. So I kind of like his approach more so. He understands the team is 3-2. It's not a catastrophic thing. He also mentions the fact that they need to get healthy. And I agree with what Bruschi was saying there.
Well, that's why the world should be ran by linebackers, because I tell you, Teddy Bruschi is absolutely correct. We're not going to panic. I think we're creating crisis. This is a team that is 3-2 that beat the Green Bay Packers, who you said was going to be in the Super Bowl, that beat the New Orleans Saints when everybody thought they were the darling of the world. Right? Let's not manufacture a crisis here. This still is a team that's very talented. Yes, they lost, but they were decimated by injury. No Lane Johnson. We know what that record is without Lane Johnson. No A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith. Listen, you talk about being able to delegate, and that's what a head coach is supposed to do. Nick Sirianni's antics. Listen, nobody really has any. My interaction isn't with the head coach. My interaction is with the coordinator. So you talk about slow starts. That's a Kellen Moore thing. He's the guy who devises the first 15-play script. That has nothing to do with Nick Sirianni right here.
But then what does? I mean, I guess what I'm asking you is what exactly.
Well, the only thing I would say to that is we here in Philadelphia are not quite sure whether or not Nick Sirianni is involved in scripting those first 15 plays or not. That's really the problem. If it was a situation of he was clearly out, like he doesn't mention that he does this and does that at times, then it would be a very easy place place to point our finger at Kellen Moore and say, well, Kellen Moore's not doing a good job. But there's a number of problems. One thing we're seeing in offense in terms of formation-wise that is very reminds us a lot of last year's offense. It's very similar to the way last year's offense looked. It looks like so far the Eagles right now are in the bottom half or bottom third actually in motion, which was something that a problem we had last year. We're taking a lot of big plays, big shots, trying to go for the explosive plays, trying to force them too much without trying to, establish a run that may cause some play action, that can cause some confusion back there. A number of issues like that. And I think this is the problem. But overall, like what Bart is saying, I like overall the fact that he's mentioning, similar to Brewski, that this is not a disaster right now. Like what you're hearing in Philadelphia, and like what you're hearing from a lot of haters and so on. But instead, it's a team just trying to figure some things out, man. But now Greeny steps in.
What is it he does? We can't be asking what the head coach does. This is what we've seen him do so far.
He decided to go for a fourth down. That's what he's supposed to. Now, listen, this is childish, and he's supposed to be the CEO. That's because he got too much time on his hands, and he has no job to do.
Let me push back on that. I agree with Kenny and Bart from this standpoint. If the five of us were running a head coaching search, and 3 years from now, we look back and say, hey, we got to the Super Bowl. Hey, we went to the playoffs in the other years. We'd be like, man, we did a great job. We hired a successful coach, not perfect. He has to grow up. He has to be the CEO. But he is the chief strategist. And one of the things that I really struggle with what Dan Orlovsky said is, when we're assessing a coach's football acumen and strategist, it's about second half adjustments. We went in with X, we're going to go to Y in the second half. And that's what football is. It's the game of chess played on grass. Why was Bill Belichick so good? Ask Teddy Bruschi. It was the adjustments. It was the matchups that worked or didn't work. And that's why, to me, we're being unfair to Nick Sirianni. He should be held accountable to some of those other things. Right. But this team, at the end of the day, has won.
I didn't get this.
All right. Mike Tannenbaum, he's crazy. Former GM for a few teams. I agree with what he was saying. I don't like the example where he's Belichick now. He's trying to say that, trying to imply that because the Eagles are winning more than they lose, that Nick Sirianni must be doing something right. So he's assuming, okay, they must be adjusting well if they're winning, though they're starting off slow. Which, I mean, yes or no, because the adjusting could be on the part of Fangio and Kellen Moore, who are the defensive and offensive coordinators respectively, or it could be Nick Sirianni's. But that's the problem. We don't quite know exactly what his role is. So it appears that he's able to kind of step in whenever he sees fit. He's definitely the guy that's deciding whether or not we're going for it on fourth down, whether or not we're going to punt, whether or not we're going to kick field goals. So he definitely does that we know. And we know that he has been unsatisfactory in that area. So Bill Belichick, man, is a coach that a lot of people have been disrespecting lately simply because he had a few bad years, after Tom Brady left. Now, I get criticizing him as a GM. He clearly did not bring in good enough talent. He clearly did not utilize the cap right. Number of those things. From the standpoint of using that money to bring in the good players is really what I'm saying. And but as far as a general, who builds a culture that is a culture of winning, who goes out there on game day and is completely prepared, knows the strengths and weaknesses of his opponent and attacks appropriately. I haven't seen anyone better than Bill Belichick since maybe a Sean Payton. Other than that, these coaches don't impress me that much, when it comes to that.
Sense that Orlovsky was talking about X's and O's. Like he said, Nick Sirianni's job is to make sure, writ large, is to make sure the team is prepared to play the game. And Dan's saying they don't look like they are when they show up. Look, it's going to be about wins and losses. Remember Bull Durham when he says you got fungus on your shower shoes? Like you got to get rid of it. You win 20 games in the show, you let the fungus grow back on your shower shoes. The press will say you're colorful.
Right.
Nick Sirianni goes back to the Super Bowl. He can act however he wants on the sideline.
That's right.
But right now, they're in a situation where they need to do better on the field. And if they don't, then we're going to keep having this conversation every week about it.
By the way, Teddy, just give us a quick sense. I'm up against the clock here. Saquon Barkley this week. Do you expect them to be making? Should we expect this to be a monster game for Barkley going up against his former team?
Good morning, everybody. We are here to discuss the ace.
Yeah, when those commercials coming on, I gotta get rid of those things. Might have to go to premium or something. 'Cause that's annoying.
That's what he wants. I mean, absolutely. He is hoping for a monster, absolute monster game. I mean, believe me, they're going to have to block up front also. And they're not, Graz has said it already, not having Andrew Thomas really hurts the left tackle of the New York Giants. So, listen, if they can block for him, he is going to have a big game. They're going to feed him over and over again because very similar to like the point that the Detroit Lions wanted to prove last week against the Cowboys, I think maybe Nick Sirianni, you think that he'd take it personal for one of his best players? Absolutely.
Got great games coming up. We're going to play a game called Who You Got.
So, yeah, I agree with that in terms of Saquon Barkley. Either he's going to have a monster game because the Giants are not prepared. And I heard that both Dexter Lawrence and Brian Burns haven't practiced. Wow, that's really unfortunate for them. Those are the two guys they need, man. I think Lawrence, if I'm not mistaken, leading the league in sacks with 7. And then you got Burns, who's a hell of a player. For the Giants, you figure to be able to stop the Eagles' offense, they're gonna definitely need those guys. Wink Martindale's no longer the coach there, so I don't know what type of strategy they'll use. Will it be something similar to what they did when they were able to beat the Eagles last year? I don't know. Hurts, though, has gotten much better against the blitz, which is something that's not talked about enough. He's gotten much better against the blitz. So, we'll see. Eagles 3.5-point favorite, I believe. If the line hasn't moved down to 3, but really clearly, just talent-wise, Eagles should beat the Giants. Now, the matchup I'm looking forward to, beyond Saquon Barkley, and him getting revenge, if you want to call it, or them getting revenge, because either they're going to stack the box to stop Barkley and make a point. Or Barkley may go wild. I think it's going to be one of those two things. But the matchup I want to see is Malik Neighbors, their rookie wide receiver, sensational wide receiver, versus the Eagles rookie Quinyon Mitchell, who should have had about 3 interceptions by now. So that's what I'm kind of looking forward to. So I think just overall about the game, I think the Eagles should go out there and win the game. Giants are struggling right now. They have more injuries than the Eagles do. And I still think the Eagles are overall better team. That has to be proven, but just on paper, that's what I'm looking at. That's what I see. So I see a victory somewhere around 24-10 Eagles. So that's what we got with that, man.